Hello and welcome to this edition of The Payoff. I'm Drew Goldfarb, joined by Rick Rockwell, and we're going to be diving into the world of professional wrestling, discussing everything from storylines and ideas all the way to potential payoffs on prop betting as well. This weekend, NXT TakeOver 25, the 25th ever NXT Network Special. We're going to start this week looking at a few of the marquee matchups from the show and giving you our betting picks and tips. So where we're going to start, Rick, is the NXT Championship Match. Johnny Gargano defending against Adam Cole. Gargano's the favorite. Who do you have in this match?
You know, I wish I could say let's go with Adam Cole to win it. I would love for him and his group of homies to just run roughshod and rule over NXT for the next couple months. And there might be a chance. I mean, the last episode of NXT, they stood tall at the end, and I thought that was cool. I love seeing factions, especially heel factions, dictate the flow of a show and reign supreme for a while. With that said, I don't see him winning the match. I think they're going to keep the belt on Gargano for a while. How long, who knows? But it's going to be a great match. I'm excited for this one. I think this is going to be one of the better matches we've seen in a while, at least in WWE.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. It would be great to have seen at some point the entire stable holding gold. They've got a tag team. They've got two singles competitors. They technically could do it. It would be great. I agree with you, though. I think that the only time that Gargano is going to lose this is either when Ciampa returns or if he's getting called up. And I don't think he's getting called up yet. I think that he may be a guy who stays in NXT for a long time because he's kind of like I almost think that he's filled the role that Finn Balor had filled when he was at NXT, where he was the guy, the face of the brand, the baby face for that brand. And I think that he might be best served just kind of staying there. I don't know that there's a reason for him to move up at this point. So
if he goes up, he'll be treated the same way they treated Austin Aries.
Yeah, that would be a really unfortunate way to go because Gargano is one of he is such a unique character for modern wrestling where you can play a traditional babyface and be extremely popular as a babyface. There's no, but before he even had little heel tendencies and towards the end of the feud with Ciampa before he got hurt, before Ciampa got hurt. He's one of the few pure baby faces I can think of that genuinely gets cheered. So, I think he's retaining too. He's at minus 175 odds. Cole plus 125 to pull the upset and win. Let's move to the women.
Yeah, it's not even worth if he had higher odds, Cole, then maybe a flyer on him, but no.
Yeah, the payoff isn't there to warrant the risk. For the women's championship match, Shayna Baszler defending. She's favored at minus 150. Io Shirai, the challenger, plus 110. Which way are you going with this? Because I was a little torn on my pick.
If we talk about the betting odds first, once again, you would think at minus 150 for the champ that the challenger would be a little bit higher, but only plus 110. That's not much at all. And it's not even worth, for me, in the betting sense, it's not worth it because until we see Baszler go up to the main roster, I don't see a reason to take the belt off her or prevent her from continuing her domination in NXT. And then here's the thing. Why would they bring her up now? At this point? If they were going to do that, they would have done it right after Mania or in the midst of all this Becky 2-belt stuff. No, I like her to retain the belt. I think it'll be a great match. Could possibly steal the show.
Baszler is one of my absolute favorites. I was there for the show in New Orleans for TakeOver New Orleans WrestleMania weekend a year ago, and I was so unbelievably on a card that was all amazing. I was so unbelievably impressed with Baszler. She is so good in her role. She's unbelievably believable. She is just that badass who is I buy her. I bought her quicker than I bought Rousey, which is weird because Rousey has that background, has a much better MMA background than Baszler did.
Yeah.
But Baszler just is her entrance, the way she walks, the way she carries herself is awesome. I don't know, though, if she beats Shirai here, if there's anything left for her. And they could give her the Asuka treatment where she goes out on top and walks away and leaves the belt behind. But I think that this is where a championship has an opportunity to change hands on the show. I don't think the main belt's going to change hands. When we get to the other singles title in a bit, I don't think that's going anywhere. And the tag team championship, which we're going to get to in a second, is already vacant. So unless they're going to do retains, and vacant gets a new home, this is the only one where I even remotely wrestled with it. So no pun intended. So I just have to go Shirai because I think that she ends up being a little undercut. I get building Baszler. So if Becky still had both belts, I could see Baszler being left and running until they decide to call her up, let Becky Lynch hold both titles for 6 months or a year, and then Baszler just shows up. But they're not building to that, so I don't know that they need to protect her that much or quite as much. The Money in the Bank match is over. Baszler's not coming in for that. Until the Rumble, she might make a random appearance, but I think that the best thing they could do for Baszler is let her, if she's going to have to drop the belt at some point. Rousey's currently out, so they don't have that main roster spot filled. I think that Baszler could be let her drop it on over this weekend, let her sit at home and take a vacation for a few weeks and rest, and then have her just randomly show up. And when Becky Lynch retains again in her next defense, or if Bayley defends and retains in her next defense, Baszler can just walk out at that point and build to something at SummerSlam. I think, too, if you're going to build to a Survivor Series match, 4 horsewomen, or even trying to do something remotely like that, you got to get Baszler up before, October. So for me, this is the only opportunity I see before SummerSlam, but I think that Shirai gets too undercut where she's not going to be a reasonable challenger. That's the only reason. I can't think of who else could take the belt off of her. And so I just have to go with Shirai at that point, just for that reason.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm sticking with the champ, though.
I'm not trying to change your mind again because I did that last week, and it was the only one you got wrong. So I'll just saying my piece, letting you keep yours. Let's go to the tag team championships because the belts have been vacated by the Viking War Raider Experience entourage, whatever name they were going by, are going by, will go by. It is a fatal 4-way, 8 men in the ring ladder match for the vacant tag team championships. Undisputed Era's Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish. They're the favorites at plus 175. The Street Profits, Angelo Dawkins and Montez Ford, plus 225. Forgotten Sons, Wesley Blake, Steve Coulter are plus 275. And then the team that doesn't have a name, Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch, are plus 550, the big betting underdogs. Of these 4, we don't have a retaining champion or a defending champion. So who do you think becomes the new NXT Tag Team Champions?
This one I wrestled with, and I'm using that as a pun intended. It was because I can see them going in a few different ways, and all of them offer appealing betting odds or have some betting value. So I like that even if you pick the favorites, you're still getting a good return on it, and that's where I'm going to head with this one. I think the Undisputed Era, I think that stable specifically needs gold. I think they deserve gold. They need gold. And I think to continue to have them perched high on the pecking order of the roster, you need some gold. You can't just have them be great in-ring workers, try and make them have to be some of the top heels, and then they never have the gold to show for it. That was what was so great about the 4 Horsemen, was that they had the gold to back it up. They were the top heels, arguably the top workers, top promos. They lived the lifestyle. They looked the best in and out of the ring, and they had the gold to back it up. If you don't at some point give a heel faction some gold, you just basically talk about undercut. You undercut them and you make them less believable. I think this is the type of match where you can have them win it without sacrificing anybody else. I think this is an NXT version of the Money in the Bank ladder match, so it's going to have a lot of craziness and a lot of cool spots and stuff. It's going to be an entertaining match. I'm going with the favorites to win this. I just feel like I hate picking favorites every match. I hate it, but I have to do it here because it just makes too much sense. It's like now's the time they have to pull the trigger on it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I understand it. They have had the belts before. I mean, you want to talk about wrestling with a pick. I literally on my stat sheet you could see I have 2 teams highlighted in yellow, and Undisputed Era was another one that I'm like I kind of wanted to as far as where I was going to pick. I still have not fully decided that, so I'm going in the moment, just going to make a pick outright because the Street Profits are a team that the fan base loves. They're popular. They get reactions to them. Undisputed Era is the best group that NXT has ever had. I mean, I don't know that there's really any competition to that, but they were the best WWE created group since the Shield. I think that's very easy to say. Mm-hmm. Oney, Lorcan, and Danny Burch, they don't have a team name, so I'm going to just move past them. But the Forgotten Sons is actually one that I really like. I love the idea of taking guys who were given other plans, they just didn't work out, especially in Wesley Blake's case, when it was Blake and Murphy. And I love the idea of taking those guys and they just all get together. It's basically the B team done right, or the social outcasts done right. They're hated for being just kind of the guys who nobody cared enough to see in their previous roles, and they all came together and they look like a biker gang, and they just they do their thing. I really want to pick the Forgotten Sons. I'm kind of torn now between them and Undisputed Era because the Street Profits I think were originally so. What I'm going to do is I'm going to basically say that I think that it is very possible that Undisputed Era gets the tag titles because someone in that faction needs a win. But because I don't think that Roderick Strong's getting one. That's just a quick spoiler for 2 picks from now. But with Cole losing, Strong, we're just both saying that he's going to lose. It would make sense. But I'm still going to pick the Forgotten Sons. And the reason for it is that, and this is, again, off of the top of my head, is they teased dissension in the ranks of the Undisputed Era previously when it came to Strong. And if all 4 lose at NXT TakeOver 25 and you want to do a 4-way match, that's the way to do it. Is everybody's a loser. That's what creates attention. That's what builds to a match. If they're splitting Undisputed Era, that's the way to do it. I could see it because they said that it's in motion. The way the card stacks up, it's very easy to do without any of them taking too bad of a loss. So I'm going to pick the Forgotten Sons, thinking that it might lead to an Undisputed Era breakup. I would much rather see Undisputed Era stay together for 5 years, make a main roster debut, take an IC or US title and a world championship challenger and a tag titles, but I'm going with that just because I'm literally between 3 of the 4 teams. So watch, it'll be Lorcan and Burch. It's just the way that's going to go. But I'm really excited for that match. That's going to be fun. North American Championship, Velveteen Dream, the champion at -400, taking on the returning to NXT Tyler Breeze, Prince Pretty, +275. Does Tyler Breeze finally get gold of some kind now going back to NXT? I mean, I'm agreeing with you. The answer is no, but you want to say why?
Because New Day rocks. I mean, seriously, Velveteen Dream's one of the promotion's main stars, and he's basically being groomed as the top guy in the promotion. And when he gets called up to the main roster, everybody expects him to have a lot of success. Tyler Breeze had a lot of success in NXT. They got called up to the main roster, and surprise, surprise, they did nothing with him. having him come back down is great for him because then he can reestablish himself and be, much more meaningful and entertaining like he was prior to the main call-up. But sticking him in a feud with arguably the NXT's top wrestler or soon-to-be top wrestler, it doesn't bode well for him. Like the odds should be a little bit higher in favor of Velveteen Dream because of how much I think he's going to win this match. I don't see any way he loses. None at all. Not unless the returning Fandango comes down there and helps him out.
I was literally just thinking that, where if Dango comes back and there's a quick distraction and a roll-up or something to that extent, like they could build it to that where he would – because, by the way, as far as the entertaining aspect goes, Dango and Breeze they are unbelievably entertaining together. Just haven't really been given anything other than those sketches to do. But yeah, it's hard even with thinking like, oh man, if Dango came back, that they could do it just to keep, and they could keep Breeze and Dango down there and they would build them back up and, give something for Dream to chase again. But it's the obvious pick. Minus 400, it's not worth a wager on it, but it's Dream's got to retain on it. Velveteen Dream is the best that they have. Like, he's a from scratch guy too for that development system. And I'm struggling to think of anybody who even holds a candle to him that didn't have somewhat of a name coming into WWE through the NXT. Roman Reigns, I guess, would technically count.
Roman Reigns, Bray Wyatt.
They screwed up with him the first time around, but the Bray Wyatt character was fantastic. So Harper's fantastic. Yeah, it's been about 5 years, 4 or 5 years.
Nobody's at that level with Velveteen Dream in terms of his unique and his uprising in that promotion and stuff. He's an extremely talented character and performer. But for me, if I was in NXT, I'd stay in NXT until they get Vince McMahon out of there.
Especially with the touring schedule they've got. I see what I'm really interested in too is I want to see what Dream cosplays as. I want to see what attire he goes with. Is it going to be another Hogan, little jab at him and dress up, or is it going to, what? I always love when you see his entrance, it's always custom tailored for every takeover event. He kind of in a way, he kind of does the. It's not the demon Finn Balor, but it's the way that he kind of gets to do something unique with every single show.
Yeah.
A little bit like what Balor used to do on the Independents when he would do his doing the superheroes and that kind of thing.
Yep.
Love that. But this one's going to be a quick one. One-on-one matchup. Matt Riddle minus 333, Roderick Strong plus 240. It's the last Undisputed Era member going up against Matt Riddle. Bro. Can you go with anyone other than Riddle for this one, bro?
No, bro. I'm honestly, once again, I'm surprised that the odds makers don't have these betting lines further apart. Like, Riddle should be at least minus 400 like Velveteen Dream. So with that said, I don't want to say it's going to be a squash match, but come on now. It's a glorified squash match.
Yeah, it's the only thing that would stand a chance for Strong in this is if they decided that TakeOver 25, everyone from Undisputed Era was winning.
I would love it.
It would be – so basically my pick is Riddle, obviously, bro. But if Strong wins, because I'm assuming this will be an early one, then just all Undisputed Era for the whole show.
I would love it.
Titles and over Gargano. Because it's either they're – that's in my head. I now have it set up after thinking out loud on the tag match. That it's either going to be 4 for 4, everybody's a winner, they're on top of the world, the heel is dominating, or we're leading to a 4-way match and a split. So, but
all about the heel life.
Shock the system. It's, but yeah, I'm picking the bro. But if Strong somehow wins, if that's the opening match or something to that extent, then change all of my picks to Undisputed Era.
Speaking of bro, we got some bros to talk about.
Yeah, so AEW Double or Nothing was last weekend. Really, really good show. We're going to go in the order that the matches were aired as far as the three that we picked. Cody Rhodes did defeat Dustin Rhodes and then formed a tag team. I called the hug. I called we both knew Cody was winning. I called Cody winning, and I said it's going to end with a hug. Either a hug and a turn or a hug and tears. And that was a beautiful moment. And good God, the amount of blood that Dustin, I don't know what he caught.
I don't know how he was still going with that much blood loss.
The blood loss like that is what led to WWE outlawing blading, because it was you get a couple of those in and it becomes especially considering it was so relatively early in the match. It was only
he had more than a crimson mask. He had like a crimson bodysuit.
Well, he did, because it was red and black when he started, and that was just all. And the face paint too also really helped with the visual, because he had the red and black face paint. So his face was already half red, or at least like a third red.
Yeah.
But oh my God, that mask was.
It was everywhere.
Everywhere. I mean, there were shots that they took where when Dustin had his face down, that it was literally just a torrent coming out of his face. And it was uncomfortable watching that.
Yeah, it was. It was.
I will say, I did not watch this show live. I watched it later. I actually watched it last night. And I had seen the video of Cody destroying the throne with a sledgehammer, like just the 20-second snippet of that happening. And I had said I was going to withhold judgment on that because it rubbed me the wrong way. As very petty. And so I did watch it. And I have two gripes with this match. That is the first one. Because it is way too on the nose. There's so much that you could do that's a little bit less of, busting out the sledgehammer. It wasn't even like a 1984 parody where he like swung around and flung the sledgehammer through a screen that was displaying, Triple H's cross symbol or throne, and it was, the pyro effect on it was a little, gimmicky. I don't know why they couldn't get the cinder blocks that Seth Rollins kept like curb stomping people through and make the throne out of that, so it would have actually just collapsed. That was an issue I had. It's a small thing. It's during the entrances because I really liked the whole. The entrance with him and with Brandy was great. Other than that, it was just so forced in. He didn't enter on the throne. It wasn't him claiming the throne. It was not like that was Dustin Rhodes didn't come out on the throne and then Cody goes and smashes it as a symbol of WWE. It was literally just like they wheeled it out for him to then pick up Triple H's signature weapon and smash. And that was an issue I had with that. I thought the beginning of the match especially when Cody was doing all the trademark Goldust moves was outstanding. I thought the last 10 minutes of the match was outstanding. And I think that it may have just had something to do with how deep Dustin cut himself, but I thought that it dragged a bit. There was the ejection of Brandy after the spear. Great spear, by the way, from Brandy Rhodes. I thought that the match dragged a bit from there as Earl Hebner was doing his like out of here thing. But for a few minutes, it just dragged on a bit. I think that it was a very good match. I enjoyed the story they told. I loved the post-match. I really hated the smashing of the throne thing. I also, like I said, I watched this last night, so the hype that I had built up from seeing all of the reviews saying this was the match of the decade and this was the greatest thing ever and the storytelling in ring was better than anything that had ever happened. I was at Gargano Ciampa at, WrestleMania weekend in New Orleans. I've seen what amazing storytelling is. This was very good. I think if this happened at WWE Fastlane 3 years ago, or 4 years ago or whatever, that it would be viewed as a really good match and one of the better ones that Cody has had and possibly the best that Dustin Rhodes had in 10 years in the company. But I don't think it is this crazy ultimate, add it to the archives of the top 10 matches of all time. I think it's a little overhyped because I think people really wanted it to be it's a really, really good match. Don't get me wrong. I think it got a little bloated in the middle. I think that's probably just because of how deep the cut was. But
I would like for all the viewers to direct their hate mail to you directly, not me, because I don't agree with anything he just said there, except it was uncomfortable seeing how much he was bleeding.
Yeah.
It just was everywhere. And it didn't seem like it stopped until later after the match when he got medical treatment. But then again, that was old school pro wrestling, and that's what happened. That's what they did. That's why these two particular guys who grew up in the business, who are second generation wrestlers, they put all these old school elements into a match, storytelling. This Dustin looked better than he has in years. He was fantastic in the ring. This was a great match. You can nitpick little things because you built it up so much in your head that it didn't meet your standard, but the general consensus from average fans to new fans to hardcore fans to so-called experts and other wrestlers themselves in the business have all said, and then of course, including me, we have all said it was a great match. It is a great match.
I agree with you. It's great. I think that it's...
Oh, you said very good. You said very good and really good.
I said that the beginning was great. I think the end was great. I think that the post-match was beautiful. That could not have been done better, especially considering that Cody was caked in his brother's blood. I think that there was really good work that he had with smearing the blood across his chest. I think that, like I said, I had two problems. It was the very, very beginning before Dustin had even entered, which just sets up. But like I said, I loved the beginning of the match. If it was 5 minutes shorter, 3 minutes shorter, I think it would have been great. I have a hard time putting it up with Gargano Ciampa with the NXT North American Championship ladder match from TakeOver New Orleans, or a hard time putting it up with Cena Punk from Money in the Bank, or with Daniel Bryan Batista. It might be like in that kind of category. But I have a hard time saying that match, the story is great, but I don't know that it was because of what they necessarily did in ring. And like I said, if it had taken place on a WWE pay-per-view in the same spot on the card, I don't think it would have been viewed quite as highly. It's one of those things where everybody
they
always
wouldn't have had that much time. They wouldn't have had that much creative freedom if it was in WWE.
No, I agree. I'm saying literally plop that match as it was exactly, minus the throne smashing thing, because no way Hunter's good with that. But plop that in the middle of a Payback pay-per-view or Fastlane or whatever, and I don't think it's viewed as highly. It's one of those things. It's like when people, what is it? The whole thing with Dave Meltzer, where it's, if it didn't happen in Japan in the Dome, the cap is 4.5 stars, but if it happened in the Dome, the minimum is 5.5 stars. Like it's, the arena can add to it. I think that the crowd added to it. Looking at it in a vacuum where you're not, this was one of the best wrestling crowds that wasn't at a WrestleMania and may have been better than a lot of WrestleMania crowds. It was an amazing atmosphere, and I think all of that adds to it. I think the match itself was very, very, very good. I think it was great. I don't think it was it may be the best match Cody or Dustin have ever had in their careers. I don't think it is the best match that has taken place in North America in the last decade. I don't think it's it's in the top 5. I think it might be close enough, but
Hashtag haterade. Wow.
I enjoyed it.
Wow.
I enjoyed it. I literally
this morning.
I'm not saying it's a garbage match. I'm saying people view it as literally the tip top, and it's like a half tier below it. That's it.
Nothing's been better.
There's what?
I said this year, nothing's been better.
It's been a rough year for wrestling, so I can't
think of a match in any promotion that's been better than that match this year.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you on that. I'm trying to rack my brain to see what may have happened earlier in the year, or like a WrestleMania weekend event. But I may agree with you on that. I don't think it's the best match that's happened in the last 24 months, or 18 months, whatever, going back to January of last year. But I agree with you that it is probably the best match that has happened this calendar year so far. Although a match that I adored on this card that was a ton of fun to me was the Tag Team Championship match. Young Bucks, Lucha Brothers. I've seen Pentagon Jr. in person. I may or may not have seen Rey Fenix in person, but if I had, this was eye-opening for me with him, because I said to you when I was talking to you just earlier today that it was as eye-opening seeing Rey Fenix in this match for me as it was the first time I noticed how special Rey Mysterio was in ring. This dude is unreal. And the way that these four work together is the chemistry there. It's brothers versus brothers, so it makes sense. But this was so much fun. I loved this.
I loved him in Lucha Underground.
Yeah.
Watched it for years, the first couple seasons, before it got a little too redundant for me with some of the storylines. But no, when you first see him and you first see him in his element, which that's what this match was, he shines, he excels, he stands out from the rest. And that added to the excitement of this match. But for me, like, this match was, like you said, it was fun to watch. Some excitement, false finishes, near falls, crazy spots. But for me, it's overkill. By the time we were done, how can anybody go on after that match? You do moves that look like they kill somebody and people kick out, and then you get an elbow to the face for a finisher in the main event or whatever it was, and that wins a match. Yet you got guys doing quadruple flips, power bombs, top rope, all sorts of insane stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of fun to watch. The spots are crazy to see in person. They're crazy to see in slow motion. They give you the moment. But when there's so many of them, it's overkill. And for me, that match was overkill.
Yeah, I mean, I as I said to you earlier, my immediate reaction was that when they were putting the match together, they must have sat down and said, okay, what could we do for false finishes? And they just brainstormed. And for 10 minutes, they sat there and they just, wrote down 100 different options. And then they forgot to trim the list because they just did all of them.
Yeah.
It was unreal. And I agree with you. And that was one of the things that I brought up when we were talking about this pay-per-view and AEW with the TV contract before, which is, how many times could you see the kind of, I don't want to say a spot fest because it wasn't necessarily that. It's that kind of pace match without getting burned out. How often can the Young Bucks or the Lucha Brothers do that match before people go, all right, I've seen it? When it's on the independents and you can kind of be protected a bit because you don't have to perform multiple times a week. But when you've got TV to fill, the Young Bucks are going to be having matches every week, I would imagine, when the TNT deal kicks in. That's where my concern lies. As a one-off, it's amazing. It's outstanding. And maybe if it weren't for the way the pay-per-view went off the air, maybe this match would have been the closer. And then send everybody home exhausted. That's the way that you go on that. But yeah, I agree. It kind of did a bit of it. It's where WWE, as much like as you want to give them like the negative for doing it because of what matches end up being in that slot for so many years, that second to last match on a pay-per-view card as being you can ignore this if you want. We're just trying to get you mentally relaxed again for the main event, where you throw out a 3-minute match just to have a match. Makes so much sense because you need something. You get that burnout where you're just not up for it. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of the WrestleManias where what was the match that went on after Hogan Rock? It was the title match.
I don't think anybody remembers.
Exactly.
All they remember is Rock.
Right. But they made that the second to last. And that was and it did a tremendous disservice to what came on after, because if you misstack a card, you could burn out your audience and your crowd and then the main event, the one that is supposed to get the most focus, ends up being ignored. I think that the match may have been better suited as an opener.
Yeah, it should have been the opener.
Because if it's the
or
first
at the very
match
least earlier in the card, yeah.
First match on a pay-per-view is always supposed to be the one. It's go out there, do crazy stuff, set the tone, set the standard, get everybody hyped. When you are 3 hours into the pay-per-view and you're doing it, it becomes burnout. When you're 30 seconds into it, it's hype. So yeah. I think that match probably should have either gone on first or last. I understand why it didn't go on last. But I enjoyed it for what it was. I don't know that I could watch it every week. I think that if I watched it every week, it would be 4 or 5 weeks in. I'd be like, all right, I'm done with these guys. They need to split. They need to do whatever, because they do everything.
Yeah.
And it's, save a little bit for the next time. And that's the one thing with transitioning from doing.
There's no saving. Yeah. There's no saving. It's an athletic performance where there's no true ring psychology in the match. Even when they try and put some psychology in there, it's very little, and it's so overwhelmed by the spots in the moves and the constant moves and the constant high pace that you don't get any storytelling from it. And then when you have that sandwiched between the two other matches that were all about storytelling, it just makes it even more apparent. But I'm not taking anything away from the match. It was a great match in terms of athleticism and the moves and the fun and excitement. Should have been the opener, and it was overkill.
Direct all hate mail to Rick Rockwell for this one. No, I agree with you. It was a really great match. It's transitioning from doing that to doing a match that can sustain a feud and sustain builds and payoffs and the ebbs and flows is going to be something that the Young Bucks may have to work on a bit.
If they didn't even have the match at all, the pay-per-view wouldn't have been as good as it was. So, I mean, we're nitpicking a little bit because that's what we do, because that's what we get paid to do. With that said, the main event, though, was a whole nother type of fun.
I loved it. You know what? What was great about all three of these going in the order that they did is that they were very different types of matches. I felt that the Jericho Omega match, Alpha Omega 2, was it had the feel of I don't want to say a more traditional main event, but a more traditional main event. It had that big fight feel. It was a slugfest. It was, feeling each other out. It was countering. It was knowing. It was all this stuff. It was a more traditional wrestling match.
Yeah.
So especially following Young Bucks, Lucha Brothers, it was so different. And I really liked it. The Jericho's entrance I thought was great. That's how you subtly reference what you left. It wasn't necessarily subtle to have 3 Jericho, body doubles or whatever come out, but I love that. That was great. It was showing the evolution of Jericho.
Yeah.
That was,
he's phenomenal. He's when you're talking about ranking people on the all-time greats and stuff, he's underrated.
Yep.
He's underrated. He's great.
The best thing with Jericho is how unbelievably versatile he is. I don't know that there is a single other competitor in wrestling in any brand ever that has done as many unique and different things as Jericho did. I would struggle to, I'm racking my brain right now. I'm trying to go through it. I'm like, you go through the all-time greats. You go, okay, Shawn Michaels, he did the tag team thing. He was, the sexy boy, the Heartbreak Kid. He did DX. He was, came back as but no, Taker's had some evolution where he went from being a literal dead man to being actually my favorite Taker, which is from the Ministry of Darkness, because that just freaked me out. But
he was a biker.
He was a biker. He came back. He's been in this current thing. So a little bit, but no one has been Lionheart Jericho with the guy picking on Goldberg because WCW won't schedule a match for him with Bill Goldberg. Y2J, the heel with the short hair and the Geritron and the suit, and all that, and then coming back and on his multiple comebacks to WWE, the one where he just did nothing but yell all of the phrases that if you look back on it or if you had paid attention to interviews he had done before that, everything that he said when he spoke was all just the generic stuff that he talked about that was like generic babyface talk. And he just would yell it, baby, and come on, yeah, and that was it. And he is so, and then now is, Alpha to Kenny Omega's Omega. He is, every time I see him, he climbs higher up in my favorite wrestlers of all time list.
He embodied even the look of a heel in the match itself. That is greatness.
Yeah.
That's greatness, right? And putting them two together. So you're right in the sense that it did have the feel of a traditional main event match. Knowing the caliber of both wrestlers, knowing what's at stake, putting them in the main event, they're going to deliver on that. So the expectations are high, and they're meeting those expectations before they even get in the ring. And then when they get in the ring, they definitely meet the expectations. And it's a different feel because you could have easily put the brothers in the main event in terms of Cody versus Dustin, and nobody would argue because of how significant that storyline is and stuff. So it's almost like AEW could have had multiple main events depending on which way they went. In my opinion, they went the right way, having Jericho Omega, and then the ending with Moxley coming out. Because what it does is it sets up them going forward. And it sets it up in a way that makes sense, that gives them multiple matches now, that gives them more storylines to work with. Basically, booking 101, storytelling 101, which is something that old man McMahon and his creative lack of brain trust have forgotten to do for 90% of what they do. That's what was so great about All Elite Wrestling was the things that they put forth. You can see how they make sense. You can see how they can build from there. They delivered on what they were going to deliver on. They made you feel like you actually were a part of a pro wrestling event. And there's a lot of excitement because of it. And that is what we need in this landscape that has been so suffocated and strangled by the WWE's just one way or the highway type approach.
Yeah, it was very nice to see something that was different and to have a more wrestling-centric alternative. I mean, there was still the stuff that was just getting back into Moxley really quick before I get into that, was his debut was awesome, was well done. Jim Ross on commentary had said afterwards that he actually did not know that Moxley had fully been signed. He knew they were in talks, but didn't know that he was part of the AEW roster. So it was genuine excitement. And that is another point to make about the difference between AEW or older WWF, WCW, ECW, and the modern WWE is you could feel the genuineness of JR's call throughout the night.
God. Oh, God. You're going to get me fired up. Like, it's so much better than the robotic, formulaic, constant same thing over and over that you get in the WWE. The same type of commentary, the same regurgitated stuff in their ears. They spit out on the microphones for us. There's no spontaneous moments. Right. There's no ad-lib. There's no creativity in the commentary, which is perfect for Michael Cole, by the way. There's none of that. But with Jim Ross, he is the embodiment of what pro wrestling used to be in terms of commentary. And it was so awesome having him back, even if he wasn't, at his peak in terms of his commentating. And he was working with some people that I personally wouldn't have picked to be part of a commentary team. With that said, though, it was Jim Ross, in my opinion, the second greatest wrestling commentator of all time.
Yeah, I the one thing I will disagree is Michael Cole, if you go back to the Attitude Era and you find the clips where he was filling in for JR in scenes where Vince McMahon is on camera and not in the back, Michael Cole, Michael Cole did the call of Mankind achieving his childhood dream. Michael Cole is an incredibly talented, more than capable commentator. I think that whether or not if he were thrown into a situation like AEW where they said, all you, whether he would fit right back into that groove that he had in the 90s and early 2000s, I don't know. But he is incredibly talented. And if you watched, I think it was Beast in the East, where Vince McMahon was not part of the production of it, you can see the call come back. And you can see the old Michael Cole.
He has the potential.
In his situation.
Jim Ross. He's handcuffed.
Yeah.
And WWE actually, outside Jim Ross, WWE actually had and have the best commentator in all of sports.
Corey Graves?
Oh, my God.
I love me some Corey Graves. I know who you're referring to.
No, I liked Corey Graves at first, but it feels like the same thing over and over with him. There's no uniqueness. There's no real creativity. He's getting fed the same stuff over and over. So I'm not like it's the same thing with the promos. It's the same thing with some of the matches. They're handcuffed to the lack of creativity that the WWE has and the lack of spontaneousness, which is why AEW is great because they're not going to handcuff them as much. But right. Ronaldo is the best commentator.
Yes.
And he turns a match into something that you must see, even if you're watching it and you're not seeing what he's seeing. You still feel like, oh my God, did that just happen? Like, that's greatness.
Mauro Ranallo, love him. He is outstanding. I do think that there are times where I'm like, that wasn't that big of a thing, just like 10% down. But it's energy level. It comes with him. He
pumped.
He is, I guess to use the AEW phrasing, he's all in or all out all the time. That's what you're going to get, and it makes for incredible excitement and also Mamma Mia chants from the crowd, which is awesome.
And that's how Gorilla Monsoon was on his commentary. He was all in, and he made moments. He made moments that were, if you didn't have commentary on, right, and you just muted it and watched it, those moments would not be as nearly iconic as they are because of his commentary. His catchphrases have spanned decades now because of his passion and him being all in. And, of course, Bobby the Brain Heenan. But we'll set that aside because Bobby the Brain's the greatest pro wrestler of all time.
That's a long discussion to have on that.
That's a whole other 2-hour discussion right there. The point is, and this is why I get so pissed off at WWE. They handcuff their talents way too much. I just read an article today, I think was in Forbes, talking about how Vince McMahon is so out of touch with what's going on. There's so much disgruntledness from his family members on down to the writing team, on down to the talent itself, people wanting to leave. Like, we haven't heard this type of frustrations and just wanting to jump ship since prior to the Monday Night Wars, when everybody was actually jumping ship because that's how bad it was back then. So, in my opinion, for the WWE to really start succeeding, Vince is going to have to move over some, because we know what Triple H can do if he gets control. NXT is the best promotion WWE has. It's the best show they have. It's the best storytelling they have. I mean, the main roster will tell some good things here and there, but it's not consistent. NXT is consistent. We could hope that All Elite will be consistent like that, because in my opinion right now, NXT is the best wrestling that's going on a weekly basis.
I would agree. And I mean, if you haven't, I am currently a third of the way through because it's a 90-minute podcast, and not to plug somebody else's podcast necessarily, but Talk is Jericho with John Moxley.
He bashed them. I loved it.
I'm 30 minutes in, and he's talked already through the I'm going to listen to the rest this weekend. It is incredible the picture that he paints of that situation there. So hopefully, what I think AEW did very well, my biggest takeaway is that they did a very good job of doing a lot of different things. The main event with a true traditional main event feel, the craziness of Young Bucks and Lucha Brothers, the brother versus brother, the blood feud, the story.
Hart showing up.
Bret Hart showing up, which was ridiculous. And then you can even go down and you can go to the 21-man Battle Royal and look at all of the uniqueness that was involved in that.
There was a lot of uniqueness in that. Yeah.
As I mentioned to you, one of the guys whose name I had forgotten for a year, but was one of my absolute favorites of guys who I had never seen before that just popped up in a similar kind of match. I was at Joey Janela's Spring Break 2 in New Orleans, WrestleMania weekend, and Orange Cassidy shows up, and I have no idea who this guy is at the time. And he walks in and but he did it in the 21-man Battle Royal too, where he comes in and his whole shtick is just like light kick, and everybody going, "Oh my God, it's the fact that they can run from that kind of comedy act and silliness to, I mean, literally everything else, to the intimidation and the seriousness of brother versus brother, or Alpha Omega, or the crazy over the top, wrestling, spot after spot of the tag team match, or everything else they did on the card. That is what gives me the most hope for AEW, is they didn't just do one type of match. They didn't just do, not tag versus singles or triple threat. They did all that too, but they were able to do the whole spectrum. They were able to go, we can do comedy. Here's Orange Cassidy attacking Tommy Dreamer with the lightest shin kicks you've ever seen, and he's treating it like he just super kicked his head off.
Yeah.
Right. They did the Tommy Dreamer. I mean, I don't know about doing unprotected headshots anymore, but with that trash can lid is not. It seems like it's one of the gimmicked ones, but
yeah.
So, but they did that. They did they showed the old school bloodbath match of Cody Dustin. I don't think it was quite supposed to have that much blood. They did a lot of variety. There was something for every type of wrestling fan. And I think that is something that you can't say for a lot of WWE events, even the really good ones. The NXT pay-per-views, takeovers are amazing. I've never seen them do comedy. And WWE, when they try to do comedy, it's usually bad. I loved Santino's the Cobra versus Mr. Sacco. That was a really good little comedy spot.
Yeah.
I mean, for everything that they made Ambrose do, 1 out of 10 would be really funny. And the others would just be like, really? But that was what really impressed me the most, was more so than any of the matches, although I was impressed, was that. Also the fact that they had the spot for Omega to be dumped on the stage not look like it was something that was there to be broken. It looked like he was thrown on the stage. I have no idea how they did that or how WWE doesn't do that. Because everything, when you see those things done elsewhere, it's always, when you see it and you see what's under them, you go, oh, okay, those are the boxes or the, to break the fall. When they were setting up, I'm looking, I'm like, that's the stage. It was shiny. It was nice and polished. I don't know what they did on that, but that is a detail that they got really right. That because that was weird. Not weird, but it was unexpected.
Another difference is, and this is something that people who watch pro wrestling their whole lives, or like me, grew up in a different era of pro wrestling and has seen the change. And you can even talk about the generation before me. They can talk about the change from the 60s and 70s to the 80s. I'm talking from the 80s just to the 90s and now, where the difference is this. You hit it on the head. All Elite, they pay attention to the little details. They treat fans like they're smart wrestling fans, and fans are paying attention to things. WWE doesn't do that. WWE changes on the fly their history itself, and then wants to treat fans like they're stupid because they'll be like, well, they'll just buy into it later, or we're just going to pretend it didn't happen. Those details is part of the things that really frustrate wrestling fans. All Elite got it right. Hopefully they can continue with that. We will see. It's the first of many. We will see what the next one brings when they go to Florida in just, I think, a few weeks. But for now, there's been the payoff. We'll have plenty more next week as we discuss the storylines as they develop, random wrestling rants, and, of course, bringing you available betting lines for pay-per-views
and other special events, which we'll be doing next week again if there are lines to be had for WWE's trip to the country they're not even going to mention the name of. I'm guessing this. I hope that that's a prop bet. If they ever mention the actual the nation they're in next.
I think it was last year, if I remember correctly. I think that was a prop bet last year. So I think it would be again. They'll have odds for this event, but probably not till closer sometime next week.
Right. So we will see how that goes. We'll bring them to you as they're available. I'm Drew Goldfarb. He's Rick Rockwell. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Enjoy NXT TakeOver 25.